The question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes. It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about. Their constituents are those firefighters and teachers and nurses. Their constituents are middle-class, hardworking folk.
And Congress has shown no inclination to move in your direction.
I disagree with you. There are plenty of leaders in Congress who understand and know that the Trump tax cuts blew up our federal deficit. None of us, and certainly I cannot afford to be myopic in terms of how I think about strengthening America's economy. Let me tell you something. I am a devout public servant, you know that. I am also a capitalist. And I know the limitations of government.
Remember, don't like, share, or subscribe. What are you trying to do? Blow up the channel or something? I got enough on my plate. Oh, this was rich. Okay, let's take a 2-3 minute pause on this just to kind of dig into this. She's a capitalist. What do you mean? She has been on the public dime since she got out of law school. She's never created a job or affected the economy in any way. So what she's talking about is complete nonsense. So she doesn't know the first thing about creating a job. She also is talking about the fair share of the wealthiest Americans. Who? How many people do you think are making over $400,000 a year? Well, go and look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's like 1% of all people are making that much. They're going to get the money from billionaires. They like to throw around billionaires. Well, let's use a small example of billionaires. And I went to verify this and use the reports published by the White House economists in 2021, the IRS's report on the top 400 individual income tax returns of billionaires. Vanguard was also another source. Okay, so let's dive into this for a second. This is a hard cut. Do you see how I announced the hard cut? So it shows that there was a cut up. So let me read this to you because this is what I was looking at as far as billionaires' tax rate. The billionaires are taxed at a rate that's closer to 23%. When Rachel Maddow, once upon a time, pulled up Trump's 2005 tax returns that she thought was going to be this breakthrough moment where they're going to show how Trump paid no taxes, it kind of went like this. After the first break that Maddow got Trump's 2005 tax return, at which point the tax returns were already available on the internet and they were glossed by the Daily Beast, Maddow was joined by this guy called Johnston. And then she began asking him how he knew Trump hadn't sent the returns out into the ether himself. And Johnson said that he couldn't have. A few hours after Maddow's airing, this had become a popular conspiracy theory, so simply because if Donald Trump were to share any of his tax returns, the 2005 1040 that he filed, that seemed like a great candidate to release. So when they looked over Trump's 2005 returns, Trump paid taxes at a rate of around 4%. But because of the alternate minimum tax, he also paid an additional $31 million. So the form revealed that rather than not paying taxes and making no money, Trump paid $38 million on his $150 million income. Maddow promised to pull a sordid revelation out of a hat, and instead, in doing so, trying to paint Trump as a tax evader, she actually established that Trump had credibility. So he paid $38 million in taxes. So why don't we use that as the billionaires' rate, let's say, of what they're paying in taxes. So in 2002, lower income households had incomes less than $56,000. Upper income households, they had incomes greater than, let's say, $169,800, about $170,000. So the middle income of the middle income of those two classes, like middle class and high class, be about $113,000. Okay, so let's just look at what then the salary of $113,000 would be in a tax respect. So at $113,000, you're at about a 17% federal tax income rate on $113,000. That's assuming that you're a single filer status. That's a tax burden of approximately $25,000. It considers that you're paying into Social Security and Medicare plus the federal tax rate. So on $113,000, you're paying in $25,000 in taxes. So if Trump paid in $38 million, and he represents this class of billionaires that are not paying their fair share, then he's paying in at $38 million the tax burden of 1,200 Americans. If the average annual salary is in the U.S. $63,000, $64,000, that's a tax burden of $15,200, a federal tax burden. So that means that based on the average annual salary of people, that would be a billionaire paying the tax burden of 2,500 Americans. How could you say that a billionaire is not contributing his fair share? Also consider that if you're a billionaire, you probably created something meaningful. You created a company which has created jobs that is bringing in federal tax revenue. It is creating local, county, state, city income taxes. That same person is going out. They're paying their property taxes. They are buying a car. They are shopping locally. They are taking that money and they are putting it into the economy. That means that some billionaire risked everything, came up with a great idea, put it out into the world, people bought into it. So not only did the billionaire, if they made $150 million in income, pay the tax burden of some 2,500 Americans, they created thousands of jobs that bring all new tax revenue into the Treasury and into the state and local city, county governments. Tell me, in that respect, a billionaire has not done his or her fair share. Make it make sense.
Kamala Harris has been in government for decades. She was first elected San Francisco District Attorney in 2003, then California Attorney General. She went on to the U.S. Senate and now Vice President. A quarter of registered voters still say they don't know you. They don't know what makes you tick. And why do you think that is? What's the disconnect?
It's an election, Bill. And I take it seriously that I have to earn everyone's vote. This is an election for President of the United States. No one should be able to take for granted that they can just declare themselves a candidate and automatically receive support. You have to earn it. And that's what I intend to do.
How rich? You have to earn everyone's vote. When in fact you didn't go through a primary, you didn't earn one single primary vote, you didn't beat out any other candidate to become the nominee, you were anointed with the title of nominee for the presidency of the United States, declared by electors. How do you even know the electorate wanted you? And you say Trump is usurping and is a danger to democracy.
Okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not. So many that people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for, and I know you've heard that.
In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States, and I have been traveling our country, and I have been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds, And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus, where we can figure out compromise and understand it's not a bad thing, as long as you don't compromise your values, to find common sense solutions. And that has been my
I
approach.
just want you to consider this was the cut that 60 Minutes went with. The answer to that question, when she simply could have said, the longer I've lived, the more I've learned. I've evolved my positions on things and on situations, things, thoughts, ideas, beliefs, that I have added more knowledge about these things to my command of issues. I've evolved and moved on from, or completely abandoned. And now I'm going to govern on a group of ideas that affects the largest range of people, not just party or partisanship, but rather bipartisan appeal. Come on, how easy is it to answer these questions? Come on, Kamala. All right. It's a mild interruption back on the cutting room floor because there's a 2-minute clip of this whole interview that got copyright blocked on YouTube. I have no subscribers practically. I do this for fun. I do it for communication. I like to do argument analysis. I like to do body language assessment. I like to do message interpretation, especially when it comes to politics and people talking about their relationships, etc. Because obviously we're trying to find the common ground of general consensus and try to move the discussion forward where everybody involved in the discussion can benefit from meeting somewhere in the middle or compromising their worldview in order to move the discussion, the situation forward and find the best solution to the question or the common problem between all of us. So for whatever reason, YouTube flagged this piece of the interview. It's like a 2-minute section. I don't know why, but they did. So they blocked that part of the interview behind me here. Behind me. So I'm just letting you know that it's not in this part of the video. And it was really kind of like, nebulous kind of thoughts and ideas. It's no different than the rest of the video, which was a lot of word salad and nonsense, but everybody's seen it now. But CBS still called a copyright on it. Didn't affect the channel, doesn't matter. It's, I'm just one in a loud room of voices having discussions and commenting and talking about these things. So let's get back to what was not blocked, unless this video gets blocked again. Let's get busy. You could see the hard clips in this part of the interview. Why can't she just admit to the obvious? At the time, the idea seemed plausible and reasonable to loosen some of these restrictions at the border. It may not have been the single best idea that we came up with because obviously people took advantage of coming across the border illegally. There are people that are coming for asylum, too much so that we cannot handle all these people coming across the border. So should we have been a little bit tighter on our restrictions? The answer is probably yes. And we tried working bipartisan, but the Republicans weren't meeting us on the fronts that we really believed with respect to immigration. Now we've got a situation that is so out of control, we had to tamp down, and we have really stemmed the tide of people coming across the border. I mean, there's so many better ways to answer this question and admit to everything that we actually see what is happening. They have now tightened up and restricted border access, and now illegal crossings have dropped dramatically. Trump couldn't have stopped the bill. The bill was being stopped by Republicans themselves. Why? Border Patrol will take anything in terms of resources, more money, more help, more hands. They are all for it. That's why they wanted it. But why did the Republicans stop it? Because it still allowed for too much migration, immigration, still allowed for too much asylum, and didn't have enough money in this in order to really give the necessary resources to Border Patrol and prevent the large people coming to the border and seeking asylum. So it was allowing too many people still to come and still too many people seeking asylum and not causing these people to stay in Mexico. But again, it's real simple. They could have rolled out, and Kamala could have even done it now, executive actions to stop the mass migration at the border and not create this whole problem of letting in fentanyl and letting in cartel and gangs and other people that are draining from the system, where you have illegal immigrants being held up in great hotels with cell phones and food and walking past homeless veterans in the street. You're going to vote? Make sure you continue to flush out all the facts before you pull the trigger on the food. The second piece to that, which was child tax credits and business credits. I don't even know what she's talking about. Well, what about me? That's not going to help benefit me. I don't have children where I can get a tax credit. I'm not going to be a first-time home buyer. I'm not starting up a new business here. So where do I see economic relief? So you really have offered a plan that is so razor thin to a very small amount of the American people. That does not work. So say what you want about Trump, but when he talks about drill baby drill and bringing down the price of energy and threatening other countries with tariffs to tax them because of what they're charging us for their goods and services coming across foreign borders into our country, those are actually real things that could potentially impact our economy. Real